Great. Well, welcome back, everyone. Um, so the next part of our program is really to have a chance for um, for any of the questions that couldn't be answered in your breakout rooms. You can ask them now, and hopefully I or someone else can answer those questions for you. Or if you had, really interesting questions that you think would benefit the larger group, then please share those as well. And I think I'll start with asking the regional coordinators and steering committee members if they had any questions that they couldn't answer or something else that they would like to share.
Julie, I'll mention, my group knows that my computer is about to kick me off, but I'll mention that maybe you want to talk a little bit about the question of when to record birds that you know are not breeding in a block, the thing we were talking about in breakout room 8, migrants singing, waterfowl courting. That's something that's come up on a number of conversations, and we know that it's a point of confusion for some people. So it might be worth discussing with the broader group in case other breakout rooms didn't get to it.
Yeah, that's a good question that a lot of people have. So this is one of the points where we differ from a lot of other atlas projects and even from the previous atlases in New York State. And we are asking people to report any behaviors that they see whenever they see them. So even if you know that blackpoll warbler isn't going to be nesting at that town park, you should still be entering it. We do want to know that. We want to know where they're migrating. We want to know when they start singing. We want to know where the waterfowl are courting, even though we know a lot of them aren't going to be breeding at the places where they are right now, where they're courting right now. We still want you to enter them when and where you see them.
And I would just follow up on that super quickly to say that one of the things that's kind of handy about that too is that when you're out there atlasing, if you're seeing a bird kind of exhibiting a behavior, if it's singing or displaying or something, you don't have to worry about kind of whether or not at that location on that day it's breeding or not. You just report the breeding behaviors that you're seeing. And so it can be really hard sometimes in many places to know whether this warbler is singing at this location. Is it actually breeding there? Is it not? And you don't have to kind of slice and dice that out in the field in the moment. If you see a bird exhibiting one of the behaviors that's in the kind of breeding codes page that we can link in the chat, report it on your list, and that's fantastic. One of the things I could jump in on from our breakout group was I think the piece that Greg and Julie just posted about to some degree around blocks. That was a big theme in our breakout group, and kind of understanding block boundaries, what blocks are, how to find out which blocks need coverage, and how to explore all of that. And so can show real quick. If you go to the Atlas homepage here, ebird.org/atlasny, there are kind of two ways to dive into blocks in different fashions. One is that right up at the top of the page here, there will always be these Atlas resources, and one of these is all about blocks. And so if you click on that, you will get kind of what a block is, where they kind of where they came from, and then also information on priority blocks, how to find block maps and know your location in the field, interpreting maps, etc. So this page kind of gives you a full set of everything: block completion guidelines, how to tell if a block is finished, pretty much everything you want to know. And then the second piece that can be really useful is going to Explore and then clicking on the Atlas effort map. And this map then gives you kind of up to the minute, basically, up to the day, updates of where people have had coverage. So one of the folks in our group was in Chautauqua County, and she was curious about where in Chautauqua County needed coverage. And so if you go here to the Atlas effort map, you can see any block that doesn't have any shading in it has had 0 kind of hours of daytime effort put in it so far for the Atlas. So you can see here, here's a priority block just north of Sinclairville. Cassadaga Center East, it's a priority block because it's surrounded or bordered with this dark border that has had no effort yet. So this can be a really great place to go to. And within that area, you can contribute lots of data in a place that there isn't any yet. So that was.
You could stay on that real quick. Somebody asked in the chat, how do you find your block and what data have been observed in your block? This is a good way to do it. So you can enter the block name in that location field at the top of the screen, or you can just zoom in and into your block and then click on a block. And if you do that, Ian can show you. You can see the overall summary, and then there's the view all block data button. And if you click that, it'll show you all the detailed information for that block. You'll see all the species. One thing I really like to do when I get to this page too, is if you click on, so species observed, you have species, breeding evidence, location, date. If you click on breeding evidence, it will sort the data for you. So it'll sort, and then you have all of the confirmed species up top, and then you have probable, and then possible all the way down. So there you go. So hopefully that answers that question. And apparently we clicked Allie's block, and she's on the call, so she's very excited that we're showing.
Great looking block, 83 species, 44 confirmed, well on its way to completion.
Alejandra is a new rock star. She was driving up from Pennsylvania like an hour each way last year to do her atlasing.
I love you guys so much. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's off.
I hope I can do as much this year. My job might actually prevent a lot of that this year, but I hope so. I'm going to do my best.
Yeah, thanks.
Julie, we've had a couple other questions in the chat. Somebody wants to know, what do you do when you have reliable observers who have seen things like whippoorwills or owls, but they don't use eBird or don't want to?
Yeah, there's a couple of different options there. If it's somebody that you think is going to be like making a lot of observations repeatedly, then it might be best. So we only want you to enter observations that you yourself have observed, right? So only enter those into your eBird account. If you are getting data regularly from somebody else and they're just not on eBird, you can create a fake, or not a fake, but you can create an account in their name, and you could enter the data for them. That's another option. If it's just going to be, here and there one-off observations, I think there was a question about like whippoorwills, and that's a species that is undersurveyed. And so we do want to know every whippoorwill location that is out there. So in that case, if it's just a one-off thing, then email that to your regional coordinator or to myself. And we have a place, a separate user account where we are entering those.
And then Charlie and Sandy want to know, they say in previous atlases, countersinging was considered territorial defense. Is that still true?
That's correct. That's how it was in the past. This time we are calling countersinging still as part of singing. So you would only enter that as an S or as an S7 for if you see it, a week apart. And then territorial is reserved for more of the like physical interactions. I do see some questions about block completion. How do you know if your block is complete, or you think your block is complete, but it hasn't been marked as complete? To that last question, I have held off on marking things complete until I finish doing data review for, reviewing the data from last year. And then I will go in and look at blocks and count them as complete or not. In terms of determining if your block is complete, I do have a post about that, and I will just pop a link into that into the chat in just a sec.
I just want to briefly mention about the block boundaries. I mentioned this in the chat earlier, but well, not everyone can necessarily. I really recommend using the app. It's really, really nice because you can actually watch, like, as you're going down a trail, even if you're offline, the boundaries are there if you're locked into the Atlas portal in the app. So you can actually see in real time right when you hit that boundary. And I can't tell you how many times you're walking a trail and you do that. And I find it really useful because that's like all of a sudden I'll end a list and then I'll start a new one immediately for that next one. And I find that really easy to do in real time.
The other tip I'll give there too that I've found useful, so there's a couple places that are really popular birding hotspots around Albany that happen to cross over multiple blocks. And so I've, when I'm in the field, I've kind of made little field marks in my head that I'll remember. I know, oh, I'm getting close to the block boundary. And then I've also made personal locations with the name of each block. So it'll be like Vischer Ferry State Park, and then the block name. And like Vischer Ferry State Park actually crosses like 3 or 4 different blocks. So I have separate personal hotspots. So then the next time I go there, it's really easy to assign the correct location to your checklists.
Has that feature been rolled out for both Android and iOS?
Mm-hmm.
And so if people aren't seeing it, you might need to update your version of whatever you're using on your phone.
Yep. Good point.
I'm kind of new to eBird, and I didn't, 2 things that I learned tonight was where I can actually see the boundaries in the map on my mobile app, and also where to change to the portal to the Breeding Bird Atlas portal, because it defaults to eBird. So I didn't know that. So now I don't have to go change it online.
Yeah, you only see the boundaries if you're on, if in the app you are not in the main eBird portal. So to change that, you want to go, I wish I could share my phone screen here, but yeah, Julie just posted a link on how to do it. Yeah, you go to settings and account, and then at the bottom there under settings, you'll have portal, and your default one is the main eBird one. And then you'll want to switch down to the New York Breeding Bird Atlas portal to do that. And then, yeah, so when you're looking at your track on your phone, even if you're offline, even if you can't fully see the map even, like, the satellite image or anything, you can still see the boundary and when you've actually hit that boundary. So like like remote Adirondack blocks, I've just had it, in my hand as I'm doing the list, even if I'm like 7 miles in or something like that, and I can still get to it and I can still see the boundary, even though my phone hasn't had signal in forever. So it's really useful in not just in cases where you get signal, but when you don't have signal either. Also helpful when hiking and navigating.
That came up in our session, and Ajit was telling us that there's a 2-minute lag, that after you begin your list, you should wait a couple of minutes for eBird, for the satellite and all that to sync up for it to pinpoint you in your block.
I suppose that another way, if you know where you are on Google Maps or on a Google Maps aerial photo, you could just make sure that that is placing you in the right location. And once it is placing you in the right location, then you can feel confident that eBird, which is using the same GPS of your phone, has found you. So it might or might not be 2 minutes, depending on your location and how good the satellites are for that particular time and place. That's a good reminder, though.
Julie, Lee and Mac want to know, when are resident birds like blue jays and crows considered to be singing as a breeding vocalization?
Crows do not have a song. So basically you can think of song as a vocalization that can, it's a vocalization that is used to express that a bird is on territory, and also to attract a mate. So if you can think of a sound like that, and it's often a sound that they will only make during the breeding season, then that is what we're considering song. So American crows don't have any song. Most of the blue jay vocalizations are also not considered song. There is one song, it's a whisper song that's hard to hear, and most people aren't even aware of it. So most of the blue jay vocalizations you're hearing are also not song. So if you hear crows and jays making sound, then you would still just mark it as an H for habitat. It's a good question.
What about the ravens? I have a lot of ravens that nest around in my area. Do they have anything that's considered a song?
No, they don't have song either. Most of the corvids don't have song.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Rhonda, if you know that they're nesting, you can just submit them as, submit the nests, right? So you can do a higher code than singing, and that's even better.
But the ravens they have kind of an aerial dance that they do, and that's very, very obvious. They get out there and they go cawing and making all kinds of noise and doing this aerial dance with each other, and the whole business. So that's a kind of courtship.
I had a question come up. It might be one for you, Ian. Is there a way that anybody, and I think it would be mostly you, Ian, or maybe Julie, can you see tracks that cross boundaries? Can that be detected kind of after the fact?
There's currently no kind of procedure in place to detect those after the fact. So that's something that could be done at some point in the future, but it's important to note that that is not being done right now. And that what we're the kind of trusting is that when you're contributing a list, that that block boundary is kind of the first Atlas essential is the key piece. Any given checklist should only ever include sightings within that square. And if you cross the boundary, you should start or stop the first list in that old block and start a new list in the block you crossed into. So if you're birding a road that goes down 2 blocks, that will be the best solution there. So there's no automated after the fact piece that the trust is in your hands to keep the sightings within a single block.
The next
And I'll follow.
I was just going to say the next Android update is going to give a small electric shock if you are in a checklist and you cross a block boundary. So I don't know what iPhone people are going to do, but I'm all set. So
that one was going to be just for you, Matt, and not anybody else. But now you blew the cover.
We had a discussion about marking boundaries on trails and things that we use or that we can help other people figure out where they are. We've been thinking about or using surveyor tape, like a fluorescent green tape tied to a tree or something. And, sometimes it's kind of hard to figure it out, and that would be a more easily recognized thing as you're going along.
Yeah, I think that the trick would be to remember to take it down at the end of the season. So we're not, polluting, or we also don't want to detract from other people's enjoyment of the area too. So yeah, it's a tricky balance. I'd say in, really densely populated parts of the state, I would try to stay away from doing that. But
Vanessa raised her hand.
Yeah, sorry, it's kind of like confusing to type in the chat. But as someone that lives where I don't have cell service, I wanted to kind of just check, because Gregory, you were mentioning, and I can see the grids when I have Wi-Fi calling, right? So I turn off my Wi-Fi where I have absolutely no service sitting here at my desk. And just a heads up, so when people do go to the Adirondacks, if you don't find your location first while you're on service or in cell service, there's like I know you can't see it, but on the eBird app, it literally is like, doesn't let me pick my location. And this happens to me before. So usually I just set it on the website or when I get back on Wi-Fi. But it says like, there's a problem with your connection. Please confirm you're connected. And it doesn't even let you click the map option. Like it's like totally, I don't know. It's like totally grayed out. So just like a heads up, if you are going to use that to find the grid lines, I usually just look on, I have like Gaia app or like use that, and I kind of know where they are on the ones I do. But if there is absolutely no cell service and you go to open it, it won't load the map unless there's something I'm missing.
If you go in airplane mode, does that fix it? Usually I just go in airplane mode in the Adirondacks.
If you click on your app, you can still see. Oh yeah, go ahead, Ian. Yeah.
I was just going to say exactly what Greg was going to say. So there's kind of two ways to look at your location, and it might be most of the time kind of don't have to know too much about it, so it's not that important. But in this case, it can be useful. When you start your list, you're given the opportunity to have a track for that. If you have that on, which is always recommended because that just makes it so much easier. When the list is going, at the top of the active checklist, there will be the time ticker kind of showing how long you've been out birding and the distance you've traveled. If you tap on that time and distance, the numbers themselves, they will open up a map that then gives you access to the block boundaries, even without data connectivity. So that will always give you that.
It's interesting that you don't click on the little location thing. You have to actually click on the numbers, because I'm clicking on the location that has my little like spot. But yeah, now like with no cell service, that's such a weird hidden trick that it's the time and your mileage that it pulls it up. Thank you for that. Because I'm like, how do I do this? I just use 2 apps, then it drains my phone battery. Okay, thank you.
Well, hopefully that'll help save the phone battery. So we've actually already made an update to the Android version to have that corner have a track icon. So when you tap on that, it shows your track, and that update is going to be coming to iOS in the coming months as well.
This is super helpful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I wanted to add to the discussion about blocks and tracks crossing over block boundaries. This kind of reiterates what Ian said, where we don't have access to the tracks, so we can't really tell after the fact that you've crossed a block boundary. This is one of the reasons why if you don't submit your checklist to the Atlas portal, we're not going to be using your traveling checklist for the Atlas, because we don't know if you were staying within a block boundary or not. So that's just, I think there's a lot of people out there that are still using the general eBird portal and expecting us to take all of their data into the Atlas, but we really can't do that faithfully and know that you stayed within your block boundaries.
So if we mess up and go across and don't pay attention at some point, we should change that into a regular eBird list. True?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can still, you submit it if you're using the phone app, you can still submit it, and then it's really easy on the website to go back and change the portal after the fact. It's just a couple of clicks, and it's pretty easily done. That is what I recommend doing. Were there any other difficult questions or interesting questions that the regional coordinators or steering committee members want to share?
Since there aren't any questions, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is regarding finding great horned owl. Last year, January 2nd, I was about to sleep at midnight and I heard a great horned owl. We've lived in this house for 35 years, never heard one. So I jumped outside, ran outside, and it was pitch dark, almost pitch dark, and I was able to find a owl sitting on top of our neighbor's tree, a pine tree, and I said, "Oh wow, I'll be able to confirm this easily." Never saw it again. I walked all over the place, followed all your instructions for nocturnal species and owls. I read an old copy of Pat Sutton's How to Spot an Owl and all that stuff, and I just couldn't find any evidence of great horned owl after that one sighting. I walked at dusk, day, looking for nests and nothing. Any suggestions there? A little bit of a specific question.
That's a great question, and I have struggled with the ones that are breeding in my backyard too, and I haven't found them. So I defer to other people that may have more experience than I do.
I mean,
anybody?
I could just jump in and say that I think you've picked one of the most difficult species probably to try and target find a nest. I don't think I've ever found a great horned owl nest by looking for the nest. I think I've only ever found it while out birding and then encountering it by happenstance, whether it was in an old great blue heron colony before the herons were back on nest. That's often a time, or an old crow nest or other raptor nest. So yeah, I would look for areas where the great blue herons might be nesting, or big pine trees that might have other raptor or crow nests, but it's definitely a tricky thing to target.
Or wait until you hear the juveniles calling.
No.
That should be soon.
Yeah, we wandered around a lot of trails. We have the Black Rock Forest near our house and some other areas which should be good for this sort of bird. And then we looked at all the nests and made notes of them. We came back and we couldn't find the nests because the leaves had grown in. Even though I had taken pictures of the place looked completely different once leaves had come in. So it was kind of a waste almost.
One of the common places around by me that great horned owls seem to like is in a large, quite often a white pine, where the tree is dead and the top has fallen off, and then that leaves this open area at the top. And they nest down in there, and sometimes you'll see their heads sticking out. And so that I had one in a white pine right on my property, and for years until the tree kind of crumbled. But and there was one in a woods in Ithaca that was doing in the same situation. So crow nests or larger nests, and then down inside these trees that have lost their tops.
Yeah, and I would say too, sometimes they can be really well camouflaged and hidden, and even if you know there's one in the nest, you may not be able to see any sign of it. So, so it's a tricky one. I think waiting for the juveniles to start begging calls is probably your best bet. I would spend your time then. Yeah. So I'm going to switch to the last couple of minutes. I just want to wrap up this. This has been a really great discussion, and it's been really great to to see all of your faces and connect with you again. And I hope that you really valued this time and having the opportunity to connect with just a smaller group of other Atlasers and with some of the other members of the Atlas team. We wanted to end with just a couple more slides just to talk about how you can stay connected with the Atlas over the next coming months. So I am going to share my screen again. And while I'm doing that, I do want to just remind you that I am taking a recording of this presentation, and somebody asked too about the chat. I think because they want to have all those links handy. And the chat does get saved as well. So I can make those available on our YouTube channel. So definitely check out our YouTube channel. That's where I've made a couple of video tutorials and also put up webinar recordings and also the town hall recordings. So there's a lot of good resources there, and there's only going to be more and more as we progress through the project. So, oops, there we go. So I wanted to start off by mentioning just a few of the events that are coming up. The next thing that's coming up is the nightjar surveys. So we piloted this last year, and it was kind of last minute, and it was very small scale. We're hoping to expand it a little bit more this year, and hopefully also target, nighthawks and some of that central and western part of the state as well. So look for, in the next newsletter, we'll have a lot more information about this. There's going to be 2 survey windows this year, one at the end of May and then again at the end of June. So that'll be a really exciting way to get out and see some of our rarer crepuscular species. And then we are hosting monthly town halls. People seem to really appreciate the town halls last year. So what we're doing this year is we send out the newsletter at the beginning of the month. And then about a week later, we're going to host a town hall again so that you have a chance to ask questions about the type of, the content of those newsletters or any other questions that have come up in your atlasing. So I have them scheduled out through July on our events calendar. I think I'm just have to schedule August, but yeah, they're pretty well scheduled out already. And then we are also starting an annual Big Atlas weekend, and this is going to be the last weekend in June. And this is really exciting. It's kind of a competition in a ways. We're going to be, having different categories with prizes for people to win. And we're also going to be competing with other states as well. So right now we at least have the Maryland and DC Atlas is going to be joining us as well. So we can kind of compare efforts that weekend. We're hoping to expand it to some other Atlas projects as well. So it'll be like a whole Atlas wide weekend. And we chose that end of June because that's a great time to get out and find those fledglings. So we're really excited about that. It'll be a full 48 hours of everyone going out and focusing on atlasing. I do want to mention that we have a bunch of swag that's available on our online shop. And one of the key things on there that you should be aware of is that there is a car magnet. A lot of people have been getting the car magnet so that they look a little bit more official or feel safer parking their car while they're doing surveys. The same thing with, like getting a hat or a t-shirt or something. It does make you look a little bit more official if that is something that you're worried about. So we do have the online store. Definitely wait for a sale. They often have sales like 30% off. So wait for a sale, and then that'll cover your shipping costs. We do have online donations we accept through PayPal as well. And we do have a sponsor of species program too, where you can sponsor a species for as little as $100, and you can get your name listed in the final product at the end of this, at the end of the project. And then we do have a strong social media presence. So we are on Facebook. We have a page and a discussion group, and the discussion group is really active. And that is a great place to ask your questions, all these types of questions that you've been asking tonight. Ask your questions there, and somebody will jump on and answer those right away. We do have Instagram as well as Twitter. And as I mentioned before, we do have a YouTube channel. And that is where I put all the webinar recordings and tutorials that I make and stuff go up there. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. It's nybba3@gmail.com. And by now you should all know our website, which is eBird.org/atlasny. So with that, I think we will say good night. Thank you everyone for coming, and yeah, hope to see you soon. Hopefully we'll run into you in the field.
Thanks everybody so much. See you
Yeah,
out there.
thanks everybody. Good gathering.
Bye.
Thanks, Ian.
All right, thanks all.
Thank you.